The smell was the first truth. Ozone and boiled coffee, a thin chemical thread floating above my kitchen counter at 6:12 a.m., where the blue light of my phone pulsed like a heartbeat. Outside, the city was still wet from night rain, the stoop reflecting the half-awake sky in gray scales. My kettle clicked off. I didn't move. 36 missed calls. 12 voicemails. The previews stacked like warnings. Call me now, urgent, family. My thumb hovered. I watched a smear of light crawl along the edge of the counter tile, turning from dull steel to silver. I opened the first email instead. Congratulations, Ms. Ellison. We're excited to move forward on your family expansion project. As the co-applicant, I stopped reading at the number. $600,000. $1.6 million, reversed out of plain text by a new hire's enthusiasm. The word co-applicant felt like a seed in my mouth that I refused to swallow. Coffee cooled. Rain ran down the window in careful, separate threads. I didn't call back. I scrolled with the measured rhythm of an auditor, because that is what I am and always have been in my family, even when I wasn't on the payroll. There was a PDF, Ellison Family Expansion, with a rendering smoothed out by expensive software, a glassy addition welded onto a house I did not live in. There was a banker's name. There was my name where it did not belong. There was a line that said I had agreed to serve as co-applicant and guarantor in support of family goals. The voicemails stacked. My mother, Lydia, in her church voice. Mara, it's not what you think. This is a blessing if you don't overthink it. My cousin Julian, all charm squeezed through time. Call me back. You're safe. It's routine. And my sister Talia, 3 voicemails, 2 texts. The last text. We assigned me to your apartment since you're never there. Keys with Mom. I watched the steam rise, thin as a hair. I counted. 36 calls before 9 a.m. I looked at the wall clock and said, softly to no one, remove me. My phone, obedient, stayed dark. Pull quote, 36 missed calls before 9 a.m. told me exactly where the fire started. Who I am, if you grow up in a family where silence is currency, you learn 2 things early, to count and to label. I was the kid who wrote the date on the back of photographs and the one who separated receipts by month, then by vendor. I tracked the small leaks, electric bills that jumped when power mysteriously went to the garage, and groceries that multiplied into weekends for guests. It wasn't that anyone asked me to. It's that I understood how noise covers theft. When our father died, I was 22, and the only one who could find the deed to the house in under an hour. I found it taped inside the cover of a chess book in his study, a notation in his sharp hand on the flyleaf. Bishop controls diagonal you forgot existed. It wasn't a lesson in grief. It was a lesson in angles. The memory came back as I sat with my cold coffee, the smell of ozone lingering from a cheap outlet that needed replacing, the house so still it seemed to hold its breath. I am not the eldest. I am not the favorite. I am the auditor who never accepted a paycheck for cleaning up messes I did not make. I am the one who learned the county recorder's hours for my own reasons and kept them in my head like the shape of a key. When I bought my small apartment in Brooklyn 5 years ago, I filed the deed into a living trust that wore my grandmother's maiden name like a veil. I told no one because no one needed to know. Pull quote, noise covers theft. I learned early to count in silence. The lever, what they try to take. They called it a family expansion because the word expansion sounds like a sunrise. The plans in the PDF showed my mother's clapboard house in Queens wrapped by a glass and steel addition, a kind of museum wing that brought in light and set a place for grandchildren not yet born. The budget was studded with numbers that felt round enough to glide, 1.6 mouters total. 480K for the shell, 112K fixtures paid to a contractor I'd never heard of. A line item for pre-transition fees that meant nothing and everything. The lever was my credit. In a family that prized sacrifice, I had the one thing they didn't. Scores that could open doors they had closed on me for years. They had a forged permission masquerading as co-applicant consent. My signature copied from a holiday card and stretched into a permission slip for a project that would bind me to debt for decades. I could see the wobble of it even in the low-resolution PDF, the T in my last name leaning like a tipsy guest. Then there was my apartment. Talia's text, "We assigned me to your apartment since you're never there," wasn't about real estate. It was about obedience. A sign. As if rooms and records were musical chairs and I was expected to stand when the music stopped. They'd swapped keys, passed whispers, and wrote me into a role. And somewhere in there, somebody said, "It's Mara. She'll be fine." Pull quote. They didn't need me. They needed a signature-shaped shadow. The shift. Receipts of erosion. I printed what mattered and laid it out on my kitchen table the way surgeons line up instruments, left to right, sharpest to dullest. A withdrawal slip from my mother's account dated last Friday for $112,000. The payee, Farside Fixtures, LLC. The address was a P.O. box, an email chain labeled Pre-Transition Ellison Home, where Julian wrote, "We should do this before Mara's renewal date so it slides." Slides. As if elections happen in bank portals and not in rooms with chairs and names. Then the screen that made my breath stutter. The lender portal. Where under the words loan participants, it read, Applicant Lydia Ellison. Co-applicant Mara Ellison. Consent on file. There was a link. See consent. I clicked and watched a JPEG resolve into the stolen mimic of my signature. I studied the stroke order, the way my hand usually favors the leftward loop. The forger knew the shape, but not the hand's habit. That wobble again. The T leaning. I found another small rot at the edges. The insurance pre-approval naming me as an interested party, and the county's preliminary notice of lien rights with my email half right. A single letter wrong to slow any automatic notice from finding me. A pattern that says not the first time. An erosion. Papers that elided me when truth mattered and put me front row when the bill did. It is a particular kind of quiet fury to gather receipts not for an argument but for a mirror. I did not call the banker. I smoothed the pages with my palm, the paper giving under heat. I opened the drawer where I keep my copies of anything with my name that could be sharpened into a blade. The living trust certificate for my apartment, dated and notarized, a recording number from 2 years ago when I refinanced and moved my title into it. The trust had a prosaic name, Marigold Street Trust, that meant nothing to anyone who wasn't me. I smiled, but not with my mouth. Pull quote. They spelled my email wrong to slow the truth, but they forgot how my T stands. The ally and the motif line. I took the 810 to the county clerk's office in downtown Brooklyn, because if you want to steady your heartbeat, you go where paper beats everything else. The clerk's foyer smelled like lemon cleaner and old ink. A tall kid with sleep in his eyes and a tie he hadn't made peace with looked up. I need the recorder's index for this number, I said, sliding across my trust's recording number, and the standard withdrawal form when a co-applicant's consent is disputed. He blinked. That's actually 2 different desks. I can wait. I set the file down. He saw the tabs. People relax when they see order. His name was Noah Patel. He did not ask me to explain my life. He gave me forms. He printed a guide sheet nobody reads and put it on top of my stack like a bandage on a bruise. Then he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice the way people do when they trust their sentence more than you. Pull 1 pin, he said, and the scaffold drops. He wasn't dramatic. He was describing physics. Take your weight off the structure that says you agreed to hold it up, and everything that depends on your consent has to recheck its math. He didn't tell me which pin because he could see I already knew. He told me something better, that gravity is patient but relentless. Pull quote, pull 1 pin and the scaffold drops. Noah. The move. Decisive. Non-technical. I did 2 things in a clean sequence. With a calm I reserve for days when the stakes have my name embossed on them. First, I walked into North Harbor Bank's Midtown branch with a single page in my hand. A wet ink affidavit stating that I had not consented to serve as co-applicant or guarantor on any family expansion loan. That my signature was forged, and that I demanded removal from the application and a fraud hold on any disbursements tied to my name. I brought my passport, my driver's license, and a copy of my signature on 3 different state filings. The manager, a woman named Sloan with a pin shaped like an anchor, read without filling the air. Do you have the consent image? She asked. Yes, I said and slid it over. That is not my hand, she nodded once, cleanly. We'll escalate. Removing you will trigger an automatic review and freeze. I understand, I said. My voice was steady. I signed her internal form with the decisiveness of someone re-inhabiting her own name. 1 signature, the pin Noah had named without naming. Second, I took the Q train back and walked up to my building, where my super, Arturo, was kind enough to confirm what I already knew. Last night, Talia had come with Julian and tried my door. She'd told him, "It's fine. This is my sister's place. We're just switching rooms in the family." Arturo had said, "Only if her name's on the lease or deed, which it ain't." He had called me and left one of the 36 messages I hadn't yet opened. They said they had keys, he said now. I said, "Then call the NYPD and tell them you're moving in." They didn't. "That's fine," I said. "If they come back, call 911 and say it's a trespass with a recorder on. I'll be here by then." What I did not say, that I had already sold the apartment. The closing had been 3 weeks ago, and the deed recorded too. The Marigold Street Trust had conveyed title to a new owner, a young woman named Hannah with a smile like a new window. I had moved a few blocks away to a smaller place that felt like a tailor-made coat. I had not told my family because I had learned a lifetime of not telling. At 4 p.m., when I knew Talia liked to move before traffic, she returned with my mother and Julian, all of them in neutrals like they were blending into an alibi. They tried the key that wasn't mine anymore. It clicked and stopped. A new deadbolt. They knocked in a pattern we used when we were children. 3 knocks, a pause, 2. Old code for, "It's us." The door opened, and a stranger, Hannah, stood framed in late light. Soft gold. She held a phone in her left hand and the deed in her right. "Hi," Hannah said, polite and firm. "Can I help you?" "This is my sister's place," Talia said quickly. No," Hannah said. "It's mine, recorded 2 weeks ago." She lifted the deed just enough for the camera on her phone to catch the seal. "If you continue to insist on entry, I'm calling 911 for trespass." Her voice carried down the hall. Arturo hovered at the end, his own phone held chest high, red recording dot a tiny heart. My mother turned. "Mara," she said when she saw me standing 3 doors down, not moving. "What is this?" "This is what it looks like," I said. Hannah closed the door gently, a firm latch that sounded like a new era. Arturo, bless him, tapped his screen. The recording saved. I nodded at him. We are allowed to have allies in quiet clothes. Pull quote, "Remove me, 1 signature." Fallout, visible consequences. The next morning began with a flood. 42 emails in my inbox from bank addresses I recognized as systems and not humans. Disbursement hold, pending verification. Consent review initiated. Fraud flag added. Mixed in with them, like debris and high water, were texts from family. "You did this to punish us? This is what you want? How could you do this to your own mother?" The number remained constant in my head. 36 missed calls yesterday. The count was a spine. The social media smear arrived by noon, as predictable as weather. My sister, who understood how to tilt the audience, posted a tidy, pleading paragraph. "It's heartbreaking when the person you love chooses money over family. We're trying to build a safe place for Mom, and a signature is holding us hostage." A photo of our mother in a cardigan and serviceable sneakers. The comments did what comments do, split between scripture and cynicism, uncles and emojis. I did not respond. I posted nothing. Instead, I assembled a receipts thread in a note stock, date stamped and emotionless. The forged consent image with a circle around the tilted T, the pre-transition email with Julian's phrasing, the withdrawal slip to Farside Fixtures LLC, the insurance pre-approval with my email mistyped, the living trust certificate for my old apartment with its recording number, the body cam request number from NYPD for Arturo's call. I did not post it. I saved it. Because quiet justice doesn't need applause. It needs timing. By late afternoon, North Harbor's fraud unit called to schedule an in-person confirmation of my statement. The woman on the phone had a voice like a glass of water. "We'll need 5 minutes of your time to verify, Ms. Ellison. Your removal initiated an automatic freeze, 72 hours minimum. No disbursements can occur with a disputed consent." "Thank you," I said. "That's what it's designed to do," she said. Sometimes simple is strong. That evening, a uniformed officer knocked on my door, his body cam a small square of accountability humming at his chest. "Ma'am," he said, "we're following up on a trespass call from your building earlier. We'd like to confirm your residency and your statement for the file." "I don't live there anymore," I said, and handed him a copy of the recorded deed to Hannah with the trust transfer. "The person you want to speak to is Ms. Hannah Kiram. I was present. I witnessed. I have nothing further." His body cam caught the paper, the date, the seal. "Understood," he said. "Thank you for your time." We both appreciated that nothing dramatic had happened. Pull quote. Sometimes simple is strong. The confrontation scene. We met in a cafe near the Queen's Courthouse because my mother insisted on neutral ground and Julian insisted on witnesses. I agreed because on-record beats rumor every time. I arrived early, ordered mint tea, and chose a table near the wall. The cafe smelled like warm bread and paper bags, an old comfort. I placed my file on the table and didn't touch it. They entered together. My mother, Lydia, in a beige coat made for softer winters, Julian, all elbows in a navy sport jacket, and Talia, eyes bright with the righteous heat of someone who has curated an audience. Julian, of course, placed his phone on the table face up, as if he invented recording. I didn't need to say, "Are we recording?" because the tiny red light said it for me. "We are not predators," my mother began. "No, hello," I didn't argue. "We are building a family compound," Julian said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "You said years ago you'd always help us with credit if we needed it." "I said I would help you understand credit," I said. "It's one signature, Mara," Talia said, eyes finding the phone. "Remove the freeze and we can do this the right way. Just for Mom." "In whose name is the deed?" I asked. "In Mom's name," Julian said quickly. "And yours, later, if—" "No," I said. "You don't get my name later to make your math work today." My mother's face tightened. "I am your mother." "I know," I said. "Which is why the truth matters more." I slid my own document across the table, the photocopy of the forged consent with the tilt circled in black. The body cam request number. The bank's freeze confirmation email printed and highlighted. "I didn't consent," I said. "And your team lied to the bank. The $112,000 to Farside Fixtures? It's a P.O. box with no active license." "We can fix receipts," Julian said, and then, as if he heard himself too late, "We can fix anything that looks messy so the lender—" "So the lender what?" I asked softly. "Doesn't notice the consent is a mimic?" Talia leaned forward. "You always do this. Hoard information to punish us when we ask for help." "It's not punishment to keep my name," I said. "It's basic custody of self." The cafe's door opened. A woman in a black coat entered, glanced at me, and nodded. Sloan from North Harbor Bank. She carried a slim folder. "Ms. Ellison," she said. "Is now still a moment?" "Of course." Julian stiffened. "We didn't consent to a bank meeting." "This isn't a meeting with you," Sloan said evenly. "This is a delivery of a notice to Ms. Ellison." She placed the paper in front of me and, with the careful diction of someone on record, read, "Notice of temporary fraud freeze and consent removal confirmation regarding application 040917. Effective immediately and for a minimum of 72 hours, all disbursements are suspended pending investigation." She looked up. "We're rolling calls to all listed contacts." "Is this necessary?" my mother whispered. "It's protocol," Sloan said, and left. Julian reached for the paper. I placed my hand on it without force. "No. You'll regret this," Talia said, but softer, like a line she knew belonged to another story. Pull quote. "It's not punishment to keep my name. It's basic custody of self." The reckoning. Formal boundary decision. The judge looked like every dismissal letter in a suit jacket. We stood in a small courtroom stacked with wood and size, the matter on the docket short and clear, a motion to enforce a freeze and a temporary restraining order, preventing any action under my name on the loan or on any property connected to it. Julian had dressed like a professional apology. Talia contained herself in a black dress that made her look younger. My mother clutched a stack of papers the way nervous hands find napkins. My lawyer, Adrian Cho, precise, unsentimental, spoke in full sentences like a well-balanced ledger. "Your Honor," Adrian said, "we're here to enforce what the bank has already enacted, a fraud freeze resulting from a forged consent. We're not seeking damages today. We're seeking a line drawn where the misuse of Ms. Ellison's name ends." Julian began to interject about family and obligation, The judge lifted a hand like a red light. "This is not Thanksgiving," she said. "This is a question of consent and forgery. Do you challenge the bank's determination?" "We can, yeah." "Fix," Julian stopped, realizing there is no sentence in which "fix" sounds like anything but rearrangement. The judge signed the order with a pen that looked heavy because it was. "Motion granted," she said. "Freeze enforced. Any attempt to circumvent this by rerouting consent is a contempt risk. We will revisit in 2 weeks to review the bank's findings." She slid the paper to the clerk. The sound of it moving was small and final. In the hallway outside, Talia hissed, "Happy now?" "This isn't happiness," I said. "It's a boundary." I let the word sit until it found a seat for itself. 2 days later, the bank concluded its review. The signature was deemed a forgery. The co-applicant was removed. The application was denied due to material misrepresentation. North Harbor's letter used the phrase "lights out" in a metaphor I suspect was not accidental. As a result of the removal and the confirmed forgery, the application is terminated. No disbursements will occur. The project is effectively lights out. A copy went to every email on the file. And then to mine, accurately spelled. At home, I opened a shoebox that did not contain shoes. I took out a cashier's check, $25,000, made out to my mother months ago. A decoy I had prepared when she'd said she needed seed money to show lenders we are serious. I had given it to her once, watched her show it, watched Julian lose it, and then watched my mother tell me it had been eaten by the bank, as if banks had appetites. They had destroyed the check, torn it theatrically at a kitchen table, believing they'd taken something from me. It had been a decoy made from a separate account purposely built for demonstrable loss. The real support, the only support I'd decided I would ever give, had already been filed months earlier. An irrevocable trust covering my mother's actual medical expenses at a modest clinic, neutered against misuse, payable only to the provider, not to any family name. It had been quietly funding copays for months. This is what I mean by vault versus decoy. The check was a door anyone could kick. The trust was a bank vault no one could find, because its name was plain and its key invisible. The day after the bank letter, a marshal served a trespass warning at my mother's house on a quiet street in Queens, warning that any attempt to enter the Brooklyn unit that was no longer mine would result in immediate removal. Arturo texted me a photo of the notice pinned in the foyer like a small flag. "We're good," he wrote. "Hannah baked cookies for the super meeting." I replied with a thank you and a smile, then put my phone away. That night, I slept without a document under my pillow for the first time in months. Pull quote, "This isn't happiness. It's a boundary." Aftermath and meaning. 3 weeks later, the house looked the same from the street and entirely different on paper. The family expansion had entered the quiet word the city uses for dreams that won't pass inspection. Denied. North Harbor's black and white letter lived in Julian's inbox. The $112,000 paid to Farside Fixtures was clawed back after the LLC failed to produce a license. I heard, through someone who still believes in back stairs, that the man behind the P.O. box had pivoted to landscaping. The social smear rotted on the vine. The comment section moved on to somebody else's relief or disaster. In the stillness that followed, I cleaned my kitchen. I replaced the outlet that smelled faintly of ozone. I placed a small shadow box on the shelf above my desk. A metal key, dull and honest, mounted on linen. It was the first key to my first place, the one I had moved into with a futon and an iron skillet. I had no need for it in any practical sense. It had outlived its lock and story. But it had weight, and I like objects that tell the truth when nobody's looking. I went to see my mother, who had asked to meet at a diner that serves pancakes until 3 p.m. The diner smelled like syrup and wrong coffee. She looked smaller. I do not like writing that sentence. She ordered tea and didn't add sugar. We did not use the word forgiveness. We did not build a bridge out of furniture that wasn't meant to be a bridge. I thought you would always spot us. And I thought that meant love, she said at last, eyes on the condensation ring her glass had left on the table. I think I confused spotting you with protecting myself, I said. They look similar until they don't. I didn't know about the trust, she said. You weren't meant to, I said gently. It's designed to make sure your care is funded whether someone is mad at me or not. She looked at me then like a person who has finally realized that the light she wants doesn't come from the lamp she's been shouting at. You didn't want to be the bank. I didn't, I said. I wanted to be your daughter. There is no single lever that repairs a story after someone tries to use your name like a crowbar. There is only the work of not becoming the thing they say you are while enforcing the boundary that protects your life. The numbers that anchored this episode, 1.6 matter, 36 missed calls, 72 hours, mean less now than the new numbers I care about. 1 key in a box. 2 hands that know where to put a signature and where not to. 3 quiet mornings in a row when the kettle clicks off and there are no urgent emails. And the only light that changes is the silver sliding across my counter. I keep Noah's sentence in my head like a tool, pull 1 pin and the scaffold drops. I did not need to swing or scream. I removed 1 signature. I let institutions do what they were designed to do when guided by a person who knows where the levers are and what consent is for. The lights went out on a project that should not have been powered by my name. The lights came up on my life, steady and mine.